All right. So
Okay.
Reddit guy. Argument about fascism, progressivism, whatever. What I find frustrating is that I'm trying to get his perspective. I'm asking him what he thinks.
Yeah.
Like, if he disagrees with me, why does he disagree with me? Why does he think that this is a good idea or a bad idea? And he, like, quotes Wikipedia and is like, that's worth nothing. Like, great. And he was like, you should have looked up the definitions. I was like, yeah, great. Okay, whatever.
Well, and it gets back to our point about. I mean, and so yes, so we'll talk about Reddit. You've been in the mines or the fields or whatever.
Sorry, I just got off 2 frustrating lessons. I'm in a bad mood. So.
No, it's good. I like this. Is fired up Antooshka. This is what I'm here for. But yeah, we're gonna do Herbert Marcuse today. Bum One dimensional man.
Yeah, I liked the reading for this week.
Yeah, it was good, but the reason I wanted to just throw that in there was, one, to obviously introduce the podcast, but then also because I think it gets at what you're talking about with definitions. Mm-hmm. How, I mean, a lot of what goes on Reddit is just warring definition battles.
Yeah, the left means this. No, the left means this. Blah, 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 blah. It's really stupid.
Which is interesting. And I mean, it makes sense because obviously language is how we communicate, and definitions are how, you need to understand that in order to communicate. Mm-hmm. But I agree with what you're saying, and I think that's kind of a central essence of our podcast is this idea of like, we're just trying to read what these people are saying and trying to understand what are they saying. Mm-hmm. And I think you're going with that approach to Reddit, and it's very much not that. But actually, I take that back. I think a lot of people on there are also. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people saying exactly what they think on Reddit, and that's why it's such a great forum.
I just want people to own their opinions, because that's how you can get somewhere. Because I actually have I'm noticing that people tend to agree a lot more than they disagree, but they're using opposing words for no reason at all. Like. A lot of people would agree that, FDR's internment of the Japanese was racist. Mm-hmm. But progressivism isn't racist. And then it's just like this whole thing. And then the bickering is about the word, and it has nothing to do with the actual actions. And it's kind of like hitting me really hard this week. I feel like I'm reading too much Gaza, Israel stuff, but it's really starting to frustrate me. We're talking about fascism. We're talking about World War II. We're talking about, millions of people dying.
Yeah.
And we're bickering about what left and right mean. And I'm saying, no, what did these people actually do?
Yeah.
What did Mussolini say he wanted? What did FDR say they wanted? What were the policies that they put in place? I don't care if they're left or right. It doesn't make any difference to me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but it's hard to get past that, obviously. But yes, I agree with you. It is interesting too. Yeah.
In my Reddit discussions this week, though, there was an interesting person who was challenging me, I think, very well. I think his handle was a dimwit or something like that, which I love too. But we ended up in this weird spot where he said that Mussolini directly says that fascism is of the right. And I said, no, he directly says it's of the left. And what's crazy is I looked at my copy of the Doctrine of Fascism, which is the original translation from 1933, and it says left. And that exact same sentence in the later translations, and probably the one you were reading, says right. And so that drove me crazy. And I was like, I need to get to the bottom of this. So it took me a while, but I tried to find the original Italian. And so I found it in Italian. What?
No, that's good. Like a dog at a bone.
And it says right.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. So Mussolini says that it's of the right. And for some reason, the translator who translated it in 1933 changed it to left.
Yeah, And the translator, what was the publishing? What
It
was
was
the
called
journal?
The Living Age.
It was Columbia, or no? Was it affiliated? I feel like everything was affiliated with Columbia back
Yeah,
then.
they were out of the UK, but
Out of the UK. Oh, they were out of the UK.
But like this translation, the Living Age translation was distributed in the White House. Like, I think it was a political choice to call it left. I don't exactly know what it was. I actually have to do more of a dive into this translator now to see what her deal was. But
yeah, no, that's pretty interesting. Yeah, what their motivation? Yeah, because that's why I was asking, like, where they're out of. What would the motivation be?
Yeah,
or if it was just a mistake.
I think it's unlikely to be a mistake.
Yeah.
Given it doesn't seem like the kind of word you would make a mistake.
Probably not.
But
yeah, and I guess the other question is, are right and left of the same definition in England in the whatever 20s?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. That's actually one I've been trying to do a little Twitter work on, or not Twitter work, Reddit work on, is right and left and seeing what people even mean by these.
Yeah,
I've gotten a few different answers. One person was saying that, and they're sure that this is definitely what it means, which is always funny. But it's an interesting construction that right refers to people who accept and support hierarchy, and left refers to people who want to equalize and dismantle hierarchy.
That's an interesting. I can kind of see that, but you know, obviously there's exceptions. I feel like
Right.
you can have a communist right-leaning.
Wait, you can?
I think so. Isn't that what the Soviet Union was?
I don't think they would call themselves right-leaning.
But in retrospect, they kind of look that way.
Huh.
Well, they're certainly authoritarian.
Right. Well, but that's the whole, like, whatever that political graph that goes around. So the x-axis is right left and the y-axis is authoritarian libertarian. And so they say, like, Hitler is the ultimate example of right authoritarian. It's all the way in the top corner.
Yeah.
But I don't
Those
know.
are,
I mean,
yeah, those are interesting vectors to use.
I just think right and left are not well defined. I mean, we talked about it the other day too, where I was using it and you were saying that it's not a helpful designation. It kind of confuses the matter, and I sort of agree.
Yeah, and I think it's just always, when we're having these conversations, it's to be mindful of when people are trying to use words. Like, it's easy to quibble,
Yes,
or throw somebody's argument off by quibbling about a definition that's maybe not essential.
right.
But anyway, I mean, to get into the Marcuse, you know, however you pronounce it. Well, because he's German, but I don't know.
German.
It also feels like it's a French name. I guess they were.
You just have to say it with a German accent; it'll sound German.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, so this was an interesting read. It was actually, I feel like, one of the more difficult reads for me, because there was, I mean, on this, again, topic of words and definitions, there was a lot of jargon I wasn't familiar with.
Yes.
Like qualitative versus quantitative change, and alienation, and
Introjection. Yep.
Yeah.
I actually, critical was the first word I got hung up on. I tried, when I started reading it, I had to do a whole side, just kind of dive into what critical is referring to with respect to critical theory. Because we've been reading this word a lot. It was happening a lot in Foucault, and just really getting an understanding, because it's used all the time, and I even used it in grad school, you know, like a critical examination of discourse around blah, blah, blah. I wrote papers like that. But I've not had a great sense for what critical means.
Yeah.
And he uses it every paragraph, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So what'd you find?
So critical is relating to critique that is politically actionable. So the reason that critical theory is called critical theory is because it is not a static or removed social theory, but it is an actionable political theory. So a critical look is a revolutionary look, like critiquing of an existing system with the purpose of taking political social action against that system.
So, I mean, the Communist Manifesto would be that then.
Yes, that would be a critical work.
Which we read.
Yes.
Okay, and so I guess we should probably say generally most people listening to this probably already know, but Marcuse, that is how you say it? How do people say it? Okay,
Marcuse.
Okay. Marcuse.
You can say Marcuse if you want.
Yeah. I'll just
It sounds like
an idiot. Yeah. Marcuse was part of the Frankfurt School. I mean, we did this spiel on a previous episode, but part of the Frankfurt School, which was, I guess, you were saying that they're really the ones who codified critical theory, or people associate them with the beginnings of critical theory. Is that the idea?
Yeah, I think so. I think just like with all of these things that we read, that you can trace roots back to 1740 or something like that. But
right.
My understanding is that the Frankfurt School is credited with sort of spreading the idea of what is called critical theory, as in the neo-Marxian formulation to try and, reform society, or not reform, revolutionize society.
Right, and that's a great point, is that so Marcuse is a Marxist. And This is interesting. So I was just in preparation for this, looking up videos of him and stuff, and he was on, there's like a great philosophy series with this guy, Brian McGee, and there's a bunch of, basically, Brian McGee interviews a bunch of professors and also some of the philosophers themselves about their writing and stuff, and they're all filmed in like the late 70s. So he interviews Marcuse in like 1977 and is asking him about his theories and stuff, and it was interesting. So with One Dimensional Man, which was the book that we read, was published in 1964, and it's a critical look at basically capitalist, or really, I guess, the industrial societies of the age is probably the better way, or technical societies of the age. And I think, from my understanding, the whole point was to offer a complete opposite view to this, and critical, first off, a critique of it, and then a offering of an opposite way of thinking about things.
Right.
Is that so? Okay. And I think the one-dimensional man aspect comes from, as we read, so just the first two chapters for today, this idea that the societies of the day are essentially one-dimensional now. They are creating one-dimensional people and essentially destroying self-determination. Right. And I thought you would probably, I don't know, I'm kind of curious to see what you think about this, because it's like, in the one hand, I feel like you probably disagree with him on a lot of stuff, but he's also, like, you could look at him in the same vein as we were looking at Rose Wilder Lane, about just, he seems actually very pro-individual and pro-freedom.
Yeah.
Well, his big critique is about, it seems like, that the present societies, and he calls the U.S. and the West as the advanced technical societies, are destroying self-determination, and the better way is a society that emboldens that. It's my reading. I don't know. Yeah, you got that vibe too?
I think that's basically true. I think that he and I would probably differ on what freedom means. I was getting a sense from reading this that
freedom from the need to be free.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
That's funkadelic.
Yeah. But I think that he would probably be more in line with that. Yeah, I mean, it's a silly line, but I think it's true because when he talks about things like freedom of choice, freedom of speech, the traditional liberties that we take as, sort of the American ideas of freedom are themselves. He doesn't use the word narratives a lot, but that's a term I gravitate towards. But are themselves tools of the status quo of the society.
Right.
And so those things that we're calling freedoms are actually tools to enshrine the power of the modern industrial society.
Right.
And so it
Advanced
seems like
technical society.
what he's looking for when he's talking about freedom is it is more of this Marxist idea, which I think I disagree with, and I'm not sure. And it's interesting because Mussolini actually addressed this from the opposite perspective of Marcuse, but the idea that the free world is a world where human life transcends the struggle to fulfill its basic needs. And so Mussolini was saying that fulfilling the materialistic needs does not actually lead to a fulfilling life, and that people need to struggle and strive and work hard for things to lead a fulfilling life. And this is where, of the right, that is very in line with a lot of more conservative ideas today. Like Jordan Peterson talks about stuff like that all the time. Joe Rogan talks about it, how important working hard and struggling is just for your own mental health and spiritual health and all these things. Whereas I think that the more Marxist idea is freeing people from the need to labor.
Yeah, I mean, that's I think the point that I'm still a little confused on.
Because he ends chapter 1 with it. We could try and go a little bit more sequentially. I tried to write up sort of a summary. It's a little hard to summarize in one shot, but I have a few notes on it. But where's this bit about the...
Well, I would say one big theme is that this idea that capitalist societies, which are basically and again, this is the 60s he's writing, so it was the Soviet, which is the Marxist, I guess, communist, but he was kind of still discussing it as an industrialized society, of course, and then the capitalist societies of the West, which are advanced technological societies.
Right.
And that essentially what happens in the advanced stages in the West is that automation becomes so good that labor gets dissociated from cost. And this creates all sorts of crazy things. And I think... So this is where I was confused of he kept saying well, I guess the idea is this leads to progressive more and more enslavement by the production, I guess.
Right.
The goods end up enslaving you. The life becomes really good, but you're enslaved by that life.
Right.
Because you need to act in a certain way in order to maintain it. So it was actually a really interesting thing to read, because this is, I would say, a common refrain that I have is but look at how good we're living. But yes, look at all the things we have to give up. And so having that question of is what we're giving up worth it and whatnot. But I was still coming away kind of confused about what is the alternative that he's suggesting. I'm assuming he's going to get to that in the later chapters.
So I think I have it here, at least the beginnings of it. And it's actually, it ties into the Reddit argument about progressive, because I think he's at least beginning to define progressive as an idea. It's towards the end of chapter 1. He says, progress is not a neutral term. So this is this critical thing. It's a political term. It's a revolutionary term. That's my side edition. It moves forward towards specific ends, and these ends are defined by the possibilities of amelioration of the human condition. Advanced industrial societies approaching the stage where continued progress would demand the radical subversion of the prevailing direction and organization of progress. The stage would be reached when material production, including necessary services, becomes automated to the extent that all vital needs can be satisfied while necessary labor time is reduced to marginal time. From this point on, technological progress would transcend the realm of necessity, where it served as the instrument of domination and exploitation, which thereby limited its rationality. Technology would become subject to the free play of faculties in the struggle for the pacification of nature and society. I'm going to keep going because the next bit's important too. Such a state is envisioned in Marx's notion of the abolition of labor. The term pacification of existence seems better suited to designate the historical alternative of a world which, through an international conflict, which transforms and suspends the contradictions within the established societies, advances on the brink of global war. Pacification of existence means the development of man's struggle with man and with nature under conditions where the competing needs, desires, and aspirations are no longer organized by vested interests in domination and scarcity. So I think it's like the abolition of labor, the Marxian term, I think it's a good way of starting to understand what he's talking about.
But he's saying he thinks things are going that way, or he's saying things should go that way.
Should. That's the progress. That is the world we wish to progress to.
Okay, because that was my also reading, is that he was saying that because he's saying that's obviously preferred to nuclear
annihilation. Because he's proposing
annihilation.
what he calls a historical alternative. This world
what?
that's free of labor, to the current world that's full of labor.
But the alternative that he's proposing requires automation to be so good that marginal labor becomes zero.
Yes. Yep. And then he follows the next bit as he talks about today's fight against this historical alternative. And he talks about how the status quo, the system as is, will fight against the idea of the abolition of labor in a variety of ways, from saying that it's a bad thing, saying that it's impossible, that it can never happen, all these things.
I guess maybe the reason I'm having a hard time believing this is because I feel like we're basically seeing that happen, though.
Believing my interpretation or believing what you say?
No, I mean, this is where I'm confused, because like I was reading it as if he was saying we're on that natural trajectory. This is like the trajectory, and it's bad because we also end up getting enslaved by the goods.
Yes.
Yes, what?
Well, I think he is saying that. I think, he's extremely confusing, and he's constantly, like, repeating back on himself. But I think this is the problem, is his theory is laid out like that. It's like a recursive theory, where everything is internally contradictory. And I think... but I think it's on purpose. Because did you read the introduction?
I started to read it. I didn't read it.
Okay.
No, I didn't finish it. Yeah.
So the introduction actually lays it. The first sentence in the introduction, I think, encapsulates the idea with a nice example. It says, "Does not the threat of an atomic catastrophe, which would wipe out the human race, also serve to protect the very forces which perpetuate this danger?" And it's that like cutting in both directions that his theory exists in, is that the fact that there is a threat perpetuates the threat itself.
Now you're not making any sense. No, but I get it, because that's his whole warfare, welfare stuff.
Right.
Like he gets
because the next sentence, the efforts to prevent such a catastrophe overshadow the search for its potential cause in contemporary industrial society. It's too dangerous to to not escalate the nuclear standoff, because if we don't, we might all die. And so instead of saying, wait, we need to figure out the root cause of this and dismantle it, we say, no, we have to keep giving those people in power even more power, otherwise we're going to die.
Right. Yes, but I thought he was then saying that what this allowed is the pacification element to occur. Mm-hmm. Whereas I thought he was saying then that we shouldn't be going towards the pacification, because the pacification leads to less self-determination.
Yeah, I mean, I think I know what you mean. I think it sounds like he's saying that sometimes too. So I don't know. I think
that might be it.
Maybe.
So we'll find out.
I was listening to some lectures on him too, and the guy I was listening to was talking about how he ends up in this very specific space, because being free from labor, if all you end up with is consumerism, is no good from his perspective. So celebrities who lounge about and go to spas and have the nicest clothes all the time, that's no good. Because even though they have become free from the need to labor, they are existing and bolstering the system of oppression that exists currently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so the only mode of being free from labor that is good, progress, the progressive project, is to free everybody from that very system.
Right. Which is why I wonder if, as we read on, we're going to find that he's actually proposing something else.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. I guess we'll just have to find out, huh, Antooshka?
Yeah. So I didn't make it through the second chapter because I was working on the introduction.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so maybe that's why I disagree with you, because it's like in his second chapter, he's more clearly distinguishing, he's talking about the one-dimensional society, which, as I said, is basically industrial societies are creating this. Actually, it was making me think of Mussolini's fascism. It's creating a unified state of sorts, and it's creating this interesting transformation of the laboring class that he discusses in like a 4-part thing, where it's let's see if I can do this off the top of the head. I don't know if I remember all the points, but it's something like I don't remember all the points. So yeah, we already talked about this. So it's mechanization is reducing the amount of actual energy that you have to expend. So this is something different from when Marx was writing, whereas like the laborers or the working class was actually the beast of burden. Now they're no longer that way because we have more and more mechanization. And so this is causing a transformation of physical energy into technical and mental skills. And then what this is also doing is making the machine, thus, isn't the basic instrument of production in advanced societies. And automation is basically ending, it means the end of measuring work. That was what one theorist said.
Yes,
as automation, because it decouples the labor time from the actual product. And then you also have workers are taking an increase, because of this, workers are thus taking an increased part in like supervisory roles, and in doing this, increased part in, I guess you could say, the quote capitalist enterprise, like production efficiency and stuff like that. They're becoming part of the production. They're taking an interest in the production. They're no longer just like, who cares? They're no longer apathetic, and then they're no longer thus in a negative position to like in society. They're not in the contrary position. They're in a more unified. There's a coalescence of, I guess, ideas. So there's sublimated slaves, but slaves nonetheless. And I thought this was kind of an interesting quote. I have it starred. And so this is Stuart Meacham, Labor in the Cold War. The pressures of today's highly technological arms race have taken the initiative and the power to make crucial decisions out of the hands of responsible government officials and placed it in the hands of technicians, planners, and scientists employed by vast industrial empires and charged with responsibility for their employers' interest. It is their job to dream up new weapon systems and persuade the military that the future of their military profession, as well as the country, depends upon buying what they have dreamed up. 1959. Nice. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
So, of course, the military-industrial complex and stuff. This is all working towards this kind of coalescence. That and this is allowing the containment of an uprising. So this allows, because this is, well, I don't know if this does. I mean, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Then he talks about the prospects of containment, one of which that allows it are the welfare state, right? The standard of living is higher, so you can justify everything. But yeah, I mean, so I'm kind of ranting now, but the thing is, it's like he then goes on to talk about the U.S. and the Soviets, and he's talking about how they're kind of both progressing towards that pacification. It seems.
Right.
But again, I was having a hard time seeing what the end goal was outside of nuclear annihilation, which was, of course...
But I think that the pacification or the abolition of labor, in the same way that Marx talks about the inevitability of the proletariat revolution, I think that it is these societies, it is the very societies that are creating the alienation and one-dimensional thinking that will lead to this revolution in being.
Well, I don't think he says it's inevitable, though, because this is what he's saying, again, like, to sum it up, he says, for the Soviet Union, he says the backward areas.
Right.
Oh, no, he's talking about here, I think he's talking about third world countries, which he calls the backward areas, are likely to succumb to neocolonialism and more or less terroristic systems of primary accumulation. I think he thinks that the Soviet Union is going to maintain, I guess, their totalitarian efforts, but I'm trying to find a quote for that. The point is, I think that he doesn't think pacification is inevitable, is, I guess, the point I'm making.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he doesn't see it as inevitable, but I think that he thinks that it is a good thing. That's where we should be going. Because there's another bit here. He says, the individual would be free to exert autonomy over a life that would be his own if the productive apparatus could be organized and directed towards the satisfaction of the vital needs.
Well, yeah, but the vital... yes, right. But
its control might well be centralized. Such control would not prevent individual autonomy, but render it possible. So
yeah,
that's essentially the same as Marx. It's free from labor.
But that's not talking about automation and decoupling of labor from...
It is. If the productive apparatus could be organized and directed towards the satisfaction of the vital needs. Because he just talked about the vital needs, like food, shelter, that stuff. If the productive apparatus takes care of that, then the individual is free.
But is the individual still not part of the productive apparatus?
I think he's separated from it in what he's talking about.
You think?
This is the goal within the capabilities of advanced industrialized civilization, the end, or technological rationality. In actual fact, however, the contrary tends to operate, or the contrary trend operates.
What's the contrary trend?
The apparatus imposes its economic and political requirements for defense and expansion on labor, time, and free time, on the material and intellectual culture.
Right.
So this is the battle that has to happen.
So that's what I think. I thought that's what he was terming pacification, because it's pacifying the populace.
Well, let's go back to the passive thing. I mean, this is what I had to do when I was reading it too.
We should just Google it.
Yeah. All right. Such a state is envisioned in Marx's notion of the abolition of labor. The term pacification of existence seems better suited to designate the historical alternative of a world.
Sorry, I just Googled pacification. But can you say that again? Can you? Did you
such
feel like
a state is envisioned in Marx's notion of the abolition of labor. That's like a term in quotes.
He's talking about in the abolition of labor. He's saying this, I thought, as a bad thing.
I don't think so.
No, I thought
maybe I'm misunderstanding. It's possible I'm misunderstanding it. It's very possible.
No, I'm probably being dumb here. You have more experience here than I do.
I don't think so. Don't retreat.
Well, so
I'm not positive that I'm right. I just think I'm right.
What I thought was that Marx had predicted that there would be a decoupling of labor as automation became so good.
Right.
But I thought that he was saying that the capitalist society, I guess, would still suppress the people in that situation, and that suppression was pacification.
The suppression of...
Because you're pacifying the people to maintain, the productive means. So even though you have a system that can produce things automatically, it still needs to be, in theory, kept up, but maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But pacification, if I just Google pacification, right? A military, political, economic, and social process of establishing or reestablishing control by a government. So that's why I'm saying it's like pacification, I feel like isn't going to be a good thing in this setting, first off, just by the wording of it.
But he's saying pacification of existence. He's using it as a technical term.
Yeah.
I don't know. We can look up sources on it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll become clear as we read on.
Yeah. So we got to put a pin in that and figure out what that is. So what do you say? So you're saying the abolition of labor and pacification of existence are what?
What I'm saying is that I thought that he's saying advanced industrial societies are on a trajectory of pacification. And Marx predicted this. Mm-hmm. And pacification is basically the society is becoming so comfortable that it pacifies the population to not rebel against it. And it pacifies it with the welfare state and the warfare state.
But with Marx, when he's talking about the abolition of labor, he's talking about how after the proletariat revolution, labor will not exist.
Where was that quote that you were talking about?
In the book, in Marcuse.
Yeah. I mean, I know we have different, but it's in the first part.
Page 18.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Is it
6 paragraphs before the end of the chapter? Chapter 1. Do you find it?
Yeah, no, I think you're probably right.
All right, so here's a paper somebody wrote on it.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a few examples of Marx on the abolition of labor, just to get a sense. So just a few quotes from him talking about free labor versus abolishing it. So Marx says, labor is free in all civilized countries. That is, it has become wage labor that can be freely sold by its owner. In the communist society, it is not a matter of freeing labor, but rather abolishing it. Another one. While the fleeing serfs only wished to freely develop and fully realize the conditions of existence, which were already at sight, and hence, in the end, only arrived at free labor, the proletarians, if they are to fulfill themselves as individuals, must abolish the very condition of their existence hitherto, which has also been the condition of existence of all society up until the present. That is, they must abolish labor.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So this is like,
yes.
so that's the Marx abolition of labor. The pacification of existence is a little bit harder to pin down, but there's a paper that says, first, let us establish what Marcuse considered to be the goal of liberation. Here, it is important to understand the term the pacification of existence. And there's a quote that we just read. Pacification of existence represents a qualitative transformation in the relationship between humans and nature and humans with each other. The terms of struggle of humans to exist or survive will no longer be dictated by those who have vested interests in domination, but rather by the majority of humans who wish to organize society in the pursuit of the maximum of human potential and the satisfaction of the, quote, true human needs. I think that's where we get to true consciousness and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, no, so I think you're right. I think he is saying that's the goal. I got a little confused there.
It's super confusing.
Yeah, well, and I got a little confused there because I guess he's saying it's naturally going there. Mm-hmm. That's, I think, what was my confusion.
Right.
The society is naturally going there.
Yes.
But it's also not naturally going there because there's also these things within the society that are trying to prevent it, which is what he was talking about as the operation. What was it?
The
operationalism.
The productive apparatus and all that.
Well, he calls it operationalism. Faced with the possibility of pacification on the grounds of its technical and intellectual achievements, the mature industrial society closes itself against this alternative.
Right.
Operationalism, in theory and practice, becomes the theory and practice of containment.
Right.
And this is how you get the irrational rationality of advanced technical societies, which is basically like planned obsolescence and stuff like that, where, you're not really being rational anymore in your, quote, rational system. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, thank you. That makes sense. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And yeah, I think this is slowly starting to clear up. But this has been my, I think, problem is I've never read any of the communist literature.
Right.
And what I noticed with him is that he uses a lot of terms that I just not familiar with and didn't even realize that he was using. They had these other meetings like qualitative and quantitative change, whereas like quantitative change seems to have something to do with like class. Or it's like class warfare would be a type of quantitative like change versus qualitative change is like change at the state level or like a grand operational change or something. It's like I don't know. I looked up Reddit, see what they were saying.
Well, no, we know that they're
kidding.
good with words.
Well, no, I mean I found papers on it, but it was still, again, all of these are sort of, they seem to have domains that aren't super well defined. Which is, I mean, that's kind of par for the course with all of the stuff that we've been doing, though.
Yep.
It's not like the communists are special in this case. I mean, hell, Socrates, what the hell was he talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is where, when you were asking me what I think about it, I think that he's definitely not wrong in his analysis of things that are happening, which is similar to what I said with Marx, where, the technological world is becoming totalitarian, in that it's taking up your entire life. Something as simple as email. What that does is that allows people to get a hold of you all the time, and smartphones. And it's this thing where in the 80s there was no email and there were no smartphones. There were telephones. But there wasn't really an expectation that you were just sitting at home waiting for somebody to call all the time. Either they got a hold of you or they didn't. Now there's an expectation for you to be available pretty much all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so whether or not you're being paid, your work extends everywhere you go through your smartphone.
Don't remind me.
Right.
Yeah.
And so he's not wrong about that. That's definitely happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure it has all sorts of negative effects and things like that. And his critique of rational systems creating irrationality, I think happens all the time as well. Our highly bureaucratic government system is stemming from a bunch of rational nodes creating highly irrational outcomes.
Right. And
then that's true everywhere.
Yeah.
That's true in the insurance industry. That ends up becoming true in science and medicine and education and everywhere. There's these things where the input, the people involved are not behaving irrationally, but then the outcome becomes an irrational outcome.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Like, non-addictive prescribed opiates,
Right.
Man.
Yeah. I mean, so I don't think he's wrong about that. I think I jump off the train. It's the same thing with Marxism. Is I just don't want that world. I don't want the world free of the struggle of labor. I don't want a world where labor is abolished.
Yeah. Well, I'll be curious well, that's interesting you say that, because
I'm a capitalist.
Well, but what do you think about the idea that we're sort of on a trajectory towards automation? You must not like that.
I don't. So there's certain major differences I have, and I don't think he's addressed this specifically yet. I do not believe that value or labor or creativity are finite resources. And so whoa. Sorry, my light was flickering. I didn't know if the power was going to go out or something. Anyway, I don't know I don't think they're finite resources. So I don't think that there's a finite number of jobs to be had. I think as long as people are valuing things, there will be things to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that
so then how
the struggle for existence is...
Yeah.
I mean, this is where, from their perspective, I'm probably like a right-wing fascist or something. I think that the struggle for existence is a universal, and if we are not in the woods fighting off bears, we are pretending to struggle for existence at Columbia University.
Well, he kind of shrugs that off at one point. He says, like, because you're essentially getting at the idea that there's a will for power within all of us in a sense, right? Which I think I agree with. And Nietzsche, of course, old Nietzsche agrees with you. The old Antichrist.
Yeah. Oh, he had a bit that I said, this sounds just like Nietzsche. Where is that?
Yeah.
The old Antichrist. The old Antichrist. Yeah.
No, it's good. I mean, what all these conversations are making me realize is how unformed my opinions are on all of these things.
Yeah, me too.
Like, I think your opinions are much better formed than mine. Part of it I haven't thought about, and part of it I've been thinking about. In some ways, I feel like just the mind too much, maybe. Like, you know, it's too focused on the individual, maybe, and not enough of the society.
Right.
And of course, they're interconnected. But yeah, I do find it interesting that he's talking a little bit more about consciousness in this, and that, you know, yeah, there was even, I think, explicit namings of consciousness. But it was getting me to think again about this thing that we've kind of talked about before, is that there does feel like there's a natural a natural progression towards cellularization, I suppose we could call it. Which is, again, what the best example being what our cells actually do in the formation of multicellular organisms. When they come together to create a larger being, they ultimately are giving up a bunch of degrees of freedom that a motile single cellular organism has, right? The free single cellular organism, Antooshka, just floating around, eating whatever it wants, whenever it wants. But there's dangers in that, right? So you get together with your buddies and yeah, and then you create, you know, and then, but the thing is, in cellularization, what I'm talking about, though, is when you think about what happens to an actual cell in this state, is they become more stationary, they have more of their needs they become specialized, that more of their needs are met by other things, they're dependent upon other things for everything. It's like, what is happening to us? We're becoming less motile, you know, more specialized, more dependent upon other things. So it's just, again, it almost feels like it's inevitable.
Right.
I'm not saying we shouldn't fight against it, but it's interesting to think about this from a biological perspective.
Right.
You know, we have this obviously additional thing that supposedly our cells don't have, is consciousness and will.
I feel like he addresses this exact thing you're saying.
Well, yeah, I think he does, because I was reading this.
He says it's like what you're saying from his perspective is trying to stamp down.
Yeah, no, I know. This is why I was
revolution.
thinking about it. Yeah, no, I mean, this is what the advanced industrial societies are trying to make the people into. That's what I was saying before, is I do think that this is the trajectory he is combating, that he sees, assuming that there's no nuclear war. He sees kind of two possibilities. I guess this is what I was trying to say before I got bogged down by semantics that I didn't understand, like pacification. But I think in terms of what he's saying, I think I had it correctly envisaged, but you could tell me, is that he has the pacification trajectory where you're abolish labor, but you have this operational trajectory where maybe you have dissociated the means of production, or the cost from work with automation, cost from labor. But you still have a population that's like cellularized and enslaved.
Right. Yes, I think that's right.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know, man. Come on, man.
How does it feel to be the enemy of all of the texts we're reading?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. I kind of am, aren't I?
I feel like not Mussolini.
No, why do you think I'm so quiet on Reddit? If I were to actually start talking Antooshka, they'd have me out in a field.
Well, I don't agree with these texts. I don't like. No, I just think it's funny because when I'm reading it, it's like, oh, this is what
I want.
This is saying everything that it's doing is like messed up. Oh, wait, do you have to bleep your name there? Oops.
Oh yeah, I'll bleep it. It's okay.
Yeah.
You deserve one unbleeping though, because I didn't bleep your name at an early episode.
An unbleeping?
Yeah.
Oh.
The great unbleeping.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, first off, I don't think I'm doing everything he's saying, and I'm not, again, I'm an individualist, a rugged individualist.
But I don't think he is an individualist. This is where it's like, I know he's saying individual freedom. I do not think he is an individualist.
It's interesting, though, because then I would ask, what does he mean by, he ends chapter 2 by talking about self-determination, and how this seems to be what he wants. And even again, it's like, it seems like the Marxist ideal is, as you said, abolition of labor for the fulfillment of humans in whatever way that is.
I think So in that sense, I get the individual freedoms. I see what you're saying, and I think that they are. I think that they're just like I don't know. I don't understand, and maybe I'm dumb. It seems like just patently absurd.
Maybe here, should I have the title of this episode be like "Communists or Individualists?" ?
Yeah, I mean, sure. There is this funny thing where opposite ends of the spectrum, you arrive at anarchy, and so it sort of wraps around. And anarchy is sort of ultimate individualism, but communism, the idea of they're not. There's different forms of communism, and I haven't read enough Marx to know exactly where he falls on things like this. And I also haven't read enough Marcuse. But, the most extreme, Soviet Maoist situation where, people who are too educated are jailed or killed because of the need to equalize, and people who are too productive are jailed or killed. This is a situation where there is no personal freedom.
Right.
Because there is no personal. There's no individual anything. It's just to serve the idea of equality or equity or whatever.
Right. And this is how I feel like at the root of all these philosophies, they're all individualistic, just in a different way.
Sure. That's interesting.
Yeah, because it's like, I think most people don't want to be in submitted to an authoritarian state that doesn't take your account at all, right? I mean, is that you're just a cog.
So the drummer that I play with, you met him.
I met him.
He and I get into arguments about it because he says that he is a collectivist. He doesn't even believe that the individual is a real thing. And he's like super pro-regulation, and like if only we just had more regulation, things would be better, kind of a thing. Yeah. And that's his perspective on things. He doesn't believe, he believes the individual is an illusion. And I can get behind certain aspects of that. But
here's what I'm getting at. I'm getting at the end of all of these policies is an individual that's being benefited. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Sure.
Yes. It's kind of a crazy idea.
So then that is crazy. Then there is only individualism.
Yeah, that's basically what I'm saying.
Nice.
Because you can't get out of the perspective of the individual.
Right.
We're
you should write some like goofy recursive philosophy.
I'm going to. It's a strange loop. We've just entered the, what is it? Gödel, Escher, Bach.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Remember that? We could read that. Okay.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, as the enemy of all this, so it's interesting because what it was also making me think about was how it is like you have all of these political theories, and then it feels like the political theory that's winning has the least philosophers defending it.
Right. Cynical. They don't actually have an ideology they're going behind.
Yes, which again gets at how it feels like it is this force that's we're just being propelled, this biological force that we're driving towards. Unless
you buy into the idea that the political philosophy that's winning is Satan worship, and that's their ideology.
Luciferianism?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm working on my laugh,
Nice,
excuse me. Yeah, no, but I don't know. It is true though. Yeah, and that's not to say there are philosophers for I guess capitalism. I mean, you could say but I don't even know if capitalism is the right term, right? It's like industrialization is maybe what it is.
Right.
The philosophy of technological development.
Uh-huh.
Because that's really what I feel like they're all talking about. And they blame it on capitalism, I guess you could say. They blame it on the drive towards profit at the exploitation of labor. But is that actually the root cause, I guess, is maybe now what I'm wondering.
Yeah, that to me feels like a massive assumption in all of these writings, and I guess I don't buy it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, economics are a very fundamental driving force, but philosophy is an important thing. Ideology is an important thing, too.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, what was interesting about this is that it didn't seem like he was a Luddite or whatever. He wasn't saying that we should stop technological progression.
Right. This is this whole thing. It's another word combination that I was sort of
which I would say is kind of in that sense where I'm not the enemy of him because I think we agree on that. I'm there too.
It's more the materialist rational, the fact that your life is materialist rationalist.
Yeah, but I think that
and your theories are all like taking ideas of social interaction and distilling them to materialism.
Yeah, but it's interesting because I feel like they are as well, which is maybe why I don't feel like I'm in opposition. And even though they're saying that they're not doing that, they are still using rationality to make points, obviously, right? They're all dealing in the realm of rationality, you know?
Right.
I mean, and logic, and
then it's the question is, what is the purpose? What are you using that logic for? Are you using that logic in service of the revolution, or are you using that logic in service of the system?
Yeah, and I got the impression that Marcuse is probably like an atheist and a materialist. Yeah. No, this is good. It's a difficult one. Any other good
I
Reddit
liked it, though. I actually think it was a good...
Yo, I did too.
I like reading this more than I liked reading Mussolini.
Yeah. Well, and one thing we didn't talk about was how, I mean, this is something that lecturer asked him about, Marcuse about, was how he basically, his work was used as a lot of the student protests and just protests generally in the 60s quoted his work, and I think it was even like said in like the 1968 riots. You know, you had a lot of university riots in in the 60s generally, but in 1968 in specific, people were writing like quotes of his book on the walls of buildings and stuff like that.
Right.
And he was saying how, you know, he wasn't like mentoring any of these people. They just found it and they realized that he was articulating a lot of what their problem with the society was. And that was just kind of interesting. He was kind of like a Jordan Peterson figure in a sense that he found fame when he was 70. And Anyway.
It is interesting. I mean, you see the through line, and you see where going from this into the like critical theories of feminism and stuff come out, and even critical race theory coming out of Harvard. All the terms consciousness raising, false consciousness. I forget what reification is one they talk about all the time.
Well, and it's blatantly against the status quo.
Right.
I mean, you know, it's a revolutionary theory, so it makes sense that, I mean, you know, it's like...
They're also great. They have these great get-out-of-jail-free defenses where any argument against this theory is showing itself to be supporting the status quo.
Right.
I love it.
Yeah.
I should write
Yeah.
all my theories like that.
Yeah. You have to start them out with saying that you're not an intellectual, though, remember?
Yeah. There was a funny comment on Reddit that said, instead of writing that whole blurb, just write as a libertarian so I know not to
I
read
saw
this.
that. So I know not to listen to you. Yeah. That was pretty funny. Yeah. Yeah, you got ratioed again, my friend.
Oh, yeah. I think it's going to happen every time. I mean, like, what do I think that anybody's going to agree with?
No, yeah. Well, some people did. Like I said, I think this week more people were actually in there supporting you.
Right.
But it is, I mean, it's kind of a wild take. I mean, it's certainly off the beaten path.
Right.
That progressives are fascists. And also, I think one thing that could have helped was that, and maybe you feel this way about modern progressives, but having sort of been more specific that at least we were talking about progressives in the early 20th century.
I think it might have been something worth putting down. If I'm being totally honest, I don't think that the movement has changed drastically. Mm-hmm. I think that progressives are similar.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, you see it, you know, the New Deal moving into the Green New Deal, they're drawing on the same ideas, and they're drawing on the lineage of these random figures like FDR.
I think that one point when I was reading through some of the comments that, you know, it was a point that I made was kind of the question, and it's a difficult thing to be definitive about, is this actually what all the progressives are thinking, or I guess you could say the most progressives? Your point was, you know, you had two progressive presidents, Wilson and FDR, that got us into the world wars, which were, but then somebody else was bringing up like Taft and stuff who were also progressive. And
I have to look into Taft. My historical understanding of Taft is he was anti-progressive, but I have to look more into it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I read, somebody mentioned him, right?
I know somebody mentioned. I just didn't look into that one enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but then further on from that, I would say that all of the wars that the U.S. has been engaged in since World War II have been because of, or not because of, but have been argued for with progressive ideology. Like out of Bourne's essay, The State, where he talks about war being the health of the state.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because he talks about what'll happen in war, what's important about war. The reason war is the health of the state is that during wartime, people who would not have coalesced and gone along with the state will all of a sudden do that. And people who are bickering politically will fall in line, and there will be political unification under the state and societal unification under the state.
Right.
And the other thing is, the progressive ideology is that through war, you can spread this wonderful progressive ideology throughout the world.
Yeah.
I didn't make any of that up. It's like,
Yeah. No, I know. But the question remains is, I guess, so it doesn't remain, actually. Right. You've convinced me, but it seems like there are people out there that are wondering, is this what all progressives feel?
I am sure that there are progressives who think something different than this,
yes,
but I would say that this is mainstream progressive ideology.
Okay.
Like, are there communists who don't want to abolish labor? Maybe. But, like, it just seems it's, like, central to the whole thing.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and that I think gets to a very good point, is what is the most central ideology of a progressive?
Yes. I think it is a paternalistic view of liberating people from the hardships of the world.
Would progressive be a maternalistic view?
Yeah, there we go. Yes.
Okay, sorry. I'll show myself out.
Aggressive, yeah.
Okay, sorry. Continue.
Yeah, I think it is a theory of top-down help for those who need it, and that's the basis of it. And
So
then
it's
you get into all
socialistic,
sorts of
right.
things about who needs help and how they need help.
Right.
You get all the way to Margaret Sanger saying the best thing we can do is breed black people out of the population by like aborting them.
Right.
And that is in the name. She's being completely sincere when she's saying that that's about helping people.
Mm-hmm. And right. Yeah.
In the same way that there are people, I don't know what was in FDR's heart, but the idea of going and fighting the evil Nazis, the just war, is in the name of liberating, oppressed people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to me, progressivism is one of the clearest examples of the road to hell being paved with good intentions.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. So every once in a while I'll go on YouTube dives into old Howard Stern clips. Because he's a fascinating individual.
Right.
And his radio show influenced so much of our culture. And going back, obviously I was too young in the 80s and 90s to listen to him, and 2000s even. But going back and realizing, and then remembering things in my life, like the E channel, that was he was part of that.
Yep.
And it's like, as a young lad, of course I looked up the E channel for other reasons, but it's like
oh, that's funny. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. But I
remember doing that.
But yeah, it's like of course all the debauchery that he was doing on his show was paled in comparison to what they're doing on the E channel, but it makes sense that it came from there. But anyway, I was listening to an interview, Gilbert Gottfried. He's a great guest,
nice.
right?
Yeah.
And he was on in like the 2003, and it was talking about the war and just the pro-war sentiment that was going on then. It was like, and it's just like, and again, obviously, he was a shock jock, so he was saying things in a way to be shocking.
Right.
But just like, we don't care. Like, we don't, it's like Gilbert explicitly was like, I'm not really sure what the connection between, Iraq and 9/11 is, but if you tell me it's there, like he explicitly said that.
Yeah.
And it's like, it just reminds you of why there's so much disaffection today with, you could say, the empire, because yeah, if this is the progressive ideology that has led to all of this stuff, and if this is the irrationality that Marcuse is talking about, of like just getting into wars for whatever reason, we don't even know why we're getting into wars anymore.
Right.
But it does seem like a large part of it is to prop up companies and stuff. Yeah, I guess it's just, I don't know what I'm saying. All I'm saying is that it's interesting, and it makes you feel like maybe we do deserve a lot of what's happening, as things feel like they're actually starting to crumble,
Yeah,
things weren't feeling like they were crumbling 20 years ago. Maybe, the writing was on the wall, but you could still go into a Pizza Hut and, it was packed.
Yeah, and now it's closed.
Now it's closed. Yeah, what? Red Lobster's closed, Antooshka.
Yeah, it's not just Red Lobster. It's like 20 chains.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a change afoot, and slowly more people are admitting it, but I still have lots of people that around me that don't admit it.
That there's change happening? There's something going on?
Yeah. Yes, but the question is it the progressive policies that are the cause, or is it, it's a confluency of things, obviously.
Right.
Do you think it's progressive policies that have been driving the last
I don't know,
century?
because I don't, so, if I think about the Iraq War, I think that the justifications for going into it come out of progressive ideology, but I see those as sort of cynical manipulations of people's better interests, or we're liberating people from the tyrant Saddam Hussein. he has weapons of mass destruction that he might use to kill millions of people. He was involved in 9/11. Just various tactics to get us emotionally on board.
Right.
But to me, that isn't even progressive ideology. That's just, the manipulation of the masses. I mean, that's closer to fascism, essentially, like direct out of Mussolini fascism.
And that's why I was bringing up the Marcuse company stuff, because it's like there's all these ties to how, Dick Cheney was on the board of Halliburton, and then all of a sudden, he gets to the White House, and we're in a war. Right. And of course,
there's the what was it? You sent me to listen to Dave Smith on Joe Rogan.
Oh yes,
I'm mid episode, but where they're talking about the old Geraldo video with the poppy fields in Afghanistan.
Oh yeah, the opiates. Right.
Yeah, it's like
yeah.
I don't know. That doesn't feel like progressivism to me. That feels like
capitalism.
Self-serving interest. Yeah, gaslighting. It's a ton of stuff. So, to me, actually, the biggest thing that is messing up our country.
Well, but you're not against self-serving interests. So, I guess what are you saying there?
Yeah. Hang on, I'm getting there.
Okay.
The biggest thing that is ruining our system is corruption, dishonesty, and lack of liability. If George W. Bush was liable for getting us into war and the deaths of, at this point, hundreds of thousands or millions of people.
Millions.
Yeah, that's like his head should be rolling kind of a thing. That's like, it's this thing that drives me crazy. Like if you work at a fast food restaurant and you lose $100, you're just fired. Even if it's an accident, even if it's a pure accident. And so when somebody has a job where there's millions of people dead after doing that job, it's like he's not even fired. There's zero liability. There's nothing. So why wouldn't you just do whatever the hell you want? And I think that's worse than progressive ideology or Marxism or anything.
Well, and I was getting at this because another comment I saw a lot was a lot of, I think, more of the angry responses were saying like, oh yeah, progressivism's fascist, like right wing isn't fascist, and then they listed all these things. And I guess, I don't know, like I guess probably I actually don't remember what they listed, but I could guess it was probably things like the abortion laws and stuff like that. But I don't know. It's probably not good for me to try to
I did have a hard time
argument.
I didn't engage with all the people who would say it was actually the conservatives who are the fascists.
Right.
I had a hard time getting good information. There was one person who gave a few citations. One was an article about how Henry Ford and Hitler were buddies.
Well, what I was going to ask was, can a conservative be a progressive? But maybe we just don't.
I don't know. I think a Republican could be a progressive.
Well, because one of the things I'm getting at here is that I think your definition of progressive, the reason why so many people were upset is because it's obviously not. It's not encapsulating everything that people normally think when they think progressive.
I agree, but I couldn't get anybody to define progressive for me.
Yeah.
I know. And every time I asked people, that nobody gave me an answer. The one guy gave me an answer, just pasted it out of Wikipedia, but at least that was something.
What was that?
What was it?
Yeah.
It wasn't a bad definition. It was similar to what I just said, actually.
The paternalistic top-down
I didn't
control.
say paternalistic. No. That's I feel like
that's your daddy complex coming in.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if I can find it. Anyway, but yeah, I couldn't really get anybody to tell me what they thought progressivism was. Because there was this other thing. It's like, do you not think the people I'm talking about are progressives? And that's interesting. If not, who do you think are progressives? If anybody.
Right. Well, think you're going to post this next week?
Yeah, maybe. I don't have a good idea yet.
No, I know. It's just
okay. Here we go. So,
yeah.
Progressivism is a political philosophy and movement that seeks to advance the human condition through social reform, primarily based on purported advancements in social organization, science, and technology. Adherents hold that progressivism has universal application and endeavor to spread this idea to human societies everywhere. Progressivism arose during the Age of Enlightenment out of the belief that civility in Europe was improving due to the application of new empirical knowledge. That sounds close to right. I might expand it a little bit, but that...
Yeah, because I was going to say, I mean, progressivism's a subset of socialism, right? Would you say that?
I would, but many people wouldn't. That was the last week's argument.
I see.
I don't know. This is where I'm saying, like, I'm way more interested in what do they mean when they say it. So if they think that what I'm saying is not right, I'm saying that these people who called themselves progressive, Group A, were doing similar things to Group B. Yes. I actually don't care what you called.
Yeah, you can call them whatever you want. Look, yeah.
And so then are they saying that they weren't doing similar things? That's interesting. And then a side note is if they want to say that they think progressivism means like supporting low taxes and free market, that's interesting.
Right.
And then I kind of want to know why they think that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Well, you think you think the Reddit stuff's helping your argument in any way?
I feel like I'm coming in too high. What I need to do if I post again is I need to find a balance, because I also feel like it's a little bit rude to make a big post that's like a bomb drop and not say anything, not respond. That feels kind of rude, because then they start arguing about what I mean and like they're all wrong. You know?
Yeah.
So how to engage, enough, but not get hung up on like getting into nonsense.
Yeah.
Because it starts to like the nonsense part. I'm sure it would with anybody. That's what makes me mad. It's just like I start to get frustrated, and I'm like checking, did they respond yet? It's so annoying. Yeah. It's like I don't want to be doing that at all.
Yep. I know. Yeah.
And sometimes, like, I'll find myself, like, they said something, and I'm doing research, and I've been, like, reading for 45 minutes to, like, cite everything, and it's like, what am I doing?
I know. I know.
And then I just stop. But then at the same time, then I've, like, let them win because they just did a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's never ending. We need to hire some interns to battle Reddit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
But the right-left thing I did think was an interesting find.
Yeah, no, yeah. Well, cool. Yeah, no, I think we probably did it, right? This is a long one.
Probably. We should keep going. Yeah. All right.
Cool.
Sounds
so
good.
I guess we didn't talk about what we're going to do next specifically.
Oh, yeah. Should we just keep going?
Yeah, or should we go to the next section, one-dimensional thought?
Sure.
Maybe do you want to do 7?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Get what he kind of wants us to do, the triumph of positive thinking. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, I don't think that's what he wants us to do.
Probably not. No, I think it's that has won and created one-dimensional thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it sounds
because he likes negative thinking.
Maybe.
Because the negation is important.
Yeah. Frickin' Hegel, man. We should probably... I mean, so Hegel...
Well, he is. He talks about Hegel. I think he is Hegelian.
Oh, yeah. No, of course.
And then Marx is draws
right.
Hegel. Yeah, right.
Well, and I sent you...
oh, yeah, I didn't read that yet.
No, yes. I know. But Trotsky's writing about, I think, historical materialism and dialectic and everything. But, yeah, I mean, I would say we could try to read Hegel, but I think you're going to find it very... I think you'll hate it.
Nice.
And I wonder how good of a podcast it'll be. It's really difficult to understand. Mm-hmm. But he's so influential, it almost makes me feel like we should try to read sometime.
I think... Okay, what do you think about this? What do you think about going to We could do another chapter out of this, or go to the end maybe and try and get his view of the world or something like that. Because he has another article that I think is really important that we could read as the third on Marcuse. That is, it's called Repressive Tolerance. And it's from a book about the sort of the evils of tolerance. And there's a whole bunch of critical theorists, and he lays out an idea of how political violence is always good because it's revolutionary, and retaliation and self-defense is always bad because it's reactionary. So, like, self-defense is a conservative action, and attacking is a progressive action.
Yeah, that works for me. We can try to read maybe just the last section, the chance of the alternatives. It's about 60 pages, but
I think I can do that.
Read as much as you can.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
And then do some repressive tolerance.
Sounds good, man.
Yeah, cool. All right. Bye.
All right. Okay. See ya.